we need to do is put the facing and the undercollar right sides together. We are going to skillfully match up these 2 points that we perfected last week. So we've got the undercollar here, the seam allowance. We're going to put a pin through there. Thank you. I really only need one. And we're going to pin it through the back to find the exact same point on the facing that we've just sewn. Come on, pin. There we go. Let's do a pin at the other end as well. Now, worth noting at that the seam allowance is all going down into the jacket. Okay. When we sew these, there's a lot of starting and stopping and moving the seam allowance around, and you want to be as accurate as possible. So when you're doing this, just keep in mind how much accuracy you've already taken, and it's worth taking your time to get this right because it's the main feature on your jacket. So you'll notice you've got a little bit of ease on the top collar that we need to ease onto the undercollar. Okay, so if it's bigger, don't freak out. It's meant to be. See? Okay. You might remember adding that on in the pattern making process. You added some on along the fall edge of your collar. Can't remember. What a way to start the week.
I know. I'm just going to be like right here.
So I've got the undercollar on the top because I want the machine to do most of the work and pull that in underneath. And it will do it. So get a close up of that. All the seam allowance here is facing down into the jacket, and it's the same underneath. You want to make sure that all your seam allowance is going down. Now we're not going right super close to the corner, but you want to leave a little bit of room, maybe like a millimeter or less. Right, turn this on. So first thing, I've just done a back tack to hold everything in place, and now I'm matching up the points to deal with the ease along the collar edge. And I'm going to stitch along that line that I chalked, right into the corner. You might need to do a half stitch there, but what we want to make sure is that when we sew the other side, it's going to be the same length, so take your time. I've got a notch here on my top collar, and that's going to match to the seam on the undercollar. Coming up to the other corner, so I'm just going to slow down to make sure I match onto that corner that I chalked absolutely perfectly. Now I'm focusing on pulling the seam allowance out from underneath and on top. They can't get caught in the stitching. and now sewing into my pin. Alright, let's see how I went. I'll pop it over there. Alright, so what we're looking for, team, is as much consistency as possible on the top and bottom. Can you come closer and have a closer look? So this is where I started, and I talked about having a little gap. Now that little gap's going to be helpful when we're turning it through, because it's going to give the top and bottom collar a bit of movement. I've sewn up to the corner, along to this corner. I had to do a little half stitch there to make sure I landed on the corner, and then I've stopped a little bit short of that back tack. Now I don't want you to have like a 5mm gap, I just want you to have a tiny little gap, okay? You'll see on the back, I haven't caught my seam allowance up. That all needs to stay down. Now on the back, again, I've got a little gap, which is going to be helpful, and I've got a little gap there as well, okay? So if you stitch over the seam, you'll need to unpick it. So it's really important that you pin it through, matching that point and that point really accurately. Okay, take your time. Please use pins. Stitch up here right to your point. Don't go past it, don't stop short. You want these to be the same length. Okay, if you've got one that's a stitch past and one that's a stitch short, you'll notice it straight away when you turn it through. Okay, I'll leave it there.